Welcome back to the Mina Kimes Show featuring Lenny, only NFL podcasts. One of the host draft's names is Shedeur Sanders. That's Lenny. I'm Mina Kimes. I'm going to talk about Shedeur. I'll say his name correctly. In the coming weeks, I'm going to the combine next week. Kevin Clark, are you going to the
No
combine?
big
We haven't
deal.
talked
I'm
about
not. No, I'm not going to the combine.
this. Do you blow out your budget on those glasses that you're wearing?
They are the glasses in the owners' meetings. I go to the owners' meetings. Right. I don't want to
Big time?
overrate the. Well, I don't want to let everybody in the secret. The owners' meetings to me are more invaluable than the combine. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Kevin Clark, he doesn't
And
hobnob with
and
the
warmer.
coaches and the lower level executives.
Yeah,
It's
no
C-suite only.
coordinators. I've never met a coordinator. If someone comes up to me and is like, "I am a coordinator," I say, "Have you met my assistant?"
Audio audience, I encourage you to check out youtube.com/Mina Kimes to see the glasses. They look cool, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate
smart.
that. Part of it's reading glasses, but then I've had real problems with like bright lights, just an aging thing. And so I got these, and then I wore them on Get Up today. And now I'd say 60% of the comments on Instagram or even on Twitter or on YouTube are about my glasses, to the point that, first of all, I look sick as hell. But also the glasses are now engagement farming. Like I'm good. Like, you know how aggregators put like an intentionally annoying thing right at the end just to get people to be like, what?
This is your Cam Newton's hat of
yeah, that's what I walked into.
I got you. Sorry, we're gonna get this pod is about big offseason questions. We're gonna talk about Tee Higgins. We're gonna talk about the quarterbacks. We're gonna talk about Myles Garrett. But first, we're gonna talk about the fact that I went to the eye doctor today for the first time in 3 years, and no big deal. My eyes have stayed exactly the same, which for me is like Khalil Mack getting like 12 sacks at age 33 or however the hell. It was such a W that the doctor was like, it's not that big of a deal. I was like, yes, it is.
It is.
My eyes have been getting worse every year. So that's a big win for me. I'll wear my glasses. I don't know.
Big W.
Okay. It is a big W. So to actually spell out in a little bit more detail, I asked you to come on to talk about the biggest questions of the 2025 offseason. I sent you those questions. And we're going to talk about the people that I mentioned, quarterbacks who may or may not be on the move, free agent quarterbacks, some players. I think we should start with the big news, because I was going to start off by talking about the quarterbacks, but then some Bengals reporters. The one I saw was from James Rapien at SI, who covers the Bengals. Saying that they are planning on hitting Tee Higgins with a second franchise tag. By the way, I saw somebody ask this question: do you ever say anything other than slap someone with the tag? I just said hitting, and it didn't feel right. You slap the tag on someone, but if you do it twice,
if you're doing it twice, you're definitely doing it. Also, you do have to deliver it by sending him the George Bush meme via text.
In my mind, did you ever have those little slap bracelets?
Yes.
Those little, like, I don't know if kids know what those are these days.
Zoomers will never know.
We have some Zoomers who are on this, and please, Jack specifically, who is the Zoomer. Sorry, Tucker, you're like our age, I think. Let us know if you've ever heard of these slap bracelets. In my mind, the Tee Higgins was already wearing one, and on the way out, the Bengals threw another slap bracelet. The second tag.
Yes. Jack, by the way, I was thinking about this the other day about jargon, because you mentioned the slap on the tag. Does anyone kick out other than guards to tackles in any walk of life?
Oh.
He can kick out to tackle. There's no other way to use that phrase to mean, like, no one kicks out anything else.
I'm going to start using it in my regular life. Like when somebody asks me if my
husband... out to podcasting. You can, I do TV, but I can kick out to podcasting.
Kick out to podcasting.
Kick inside. You can kick inside the guard.
Can I say something? And I know you're going to... You already thought about this, but I'm dumb and I didn't. I've been on 500 segments about Tee Higgins already because he was clearly the most desirable free agent, wide receivers. Well, really,
anything.
Joe Burrow did a whole media tour on Super Bowl week where he was basically pressuring the Bengals to keep him, yada, yada. I don't think that the tag came up in any of the segments I was on. So it was sorry, I should give some detail here. It was a non-exclusive franchise tag, which is $26 million, which is less than he would make on a multi-year contract. And it's what the Ravens did with Lamar Jackson. It rarely happens, and it's almost never actually plays out, which is that if another team gives him an offer, he can go out and go seek other offers. Then the Bengals can match it, or the team that signs him gives him first 2-round picks. So that didn't happen with Lamar. Kevin, as I'm hearing this, I'm like,
Famously.
I feel dumb because this seems like a pretty obvious thing for Cincinnati to do. James, the reporter, also reported that they want to do a long-term deal with him. So
Yeah,
this
I'm
is
sure
good.
they do. Like it was funny, the headline last night or Monday night, Jeremy Fowler's headline, which I'm sure is accurate. Jeremy's a great reporter. He's been on my show a bunch, but it was like, well, they want to keep Trey Hendrickson and Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins. I'm sure they do. But we have decades of data points that they're probably not going to. They let Jesse Bates walk after his franchise tag saga was over. And then there was a couple reports like basically like Bates didn't want to play on the tag, and then Burrow maybe took him to a UFC fight to convince him to do one last ride, as one does. That's just how male friendships work. We just go to UFC fights and then good things happen. But it was like one last ride, and then Bates becomes the instant Pro Bowler in Atlanta. Harry Douglas brought up to me, I was talking to him earlier today, Joe Mixon as sort of someone that they probably should have kept. But I think that's kind of a different deal. To me, you have these young superstars, and like so everybody overrates the Super Bowl as a team building concept, right? Like I remember famously, the Giants beat Tom Brady, and everybody's like, "Man, you got to have a 4-man pass rush. You got to have one." Oh, cool. Wow, the Giants invented that. The Giants invented the 4-man pass rush in 2007 and then again in 2011. Thank God they showed the way. Everybody's trying to do it. Same thing with the Seahawks and tall corners, right? Like, oh, wow, we're going to get tall cornerbacks. Are we sure that's why the Seahawks were good? Because Richard Sherman was 2 inches taller than other cornerbacks and Brandon Brown? Oh, okay, maybe not. But we always overrate them. But one thing that can't be overrated, and listen, by the way, the Eagles' trenches obviously is why they won. But if you're looking at anything from the Eagles, Mina, it's signing guys early. Signing guys as soon as they hit, as soon as they know, hey, we want this guy around. Like I think with Zach Berman and Bo Wolf was talking about how like the Eagles are kicking themselves that they didn't tie up Milt Williams as soon as he was good. Like as soon as Milt Williams like shows up in practice and looks good, it's like, hey, have a 4-year extension, buddy. And like
Yeah.
that's Monday morning quarterbacking a little bit, but that's what they do. They find these guys and they say, you're staying here. They have contingency plans. They draft guys 2 years early. And the Bengals don't do that. They kick the can down the road. They negotiate at the last possible second. And same with the Cowboys. The Bengals are the weirder older cousin. Mike Brown is 89 years old. I know that his family, Katie Blackburn, other people have taken more of a role, I guess, in the finance and the contract part of it. But the way they leave negotiations, the fact that they do not, with the exception of Burrow, guarantee years in the second year of the deal. That's the reason they can't give the Justin Jefferson contract to Jamar Chase, if I'm not mistaken. The fact that they don't spend enough cash up front.
Yeah.
Jake Liskow had a piece about that. They're basically 2% under league average as far as just spending cash over cap, which I don't think is befitting of a contender. I think every other AFC contender is going out and at least making something to show that they're serious about trying to win. I have not seen that from the Bengals. And so the franchise tag here makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
I just don't see a scenario where they keep all 3 of these guys because of that. Because like the Cowboys, you're not maximizing
Right.
your roster.
Yeah, like you can keep them all, but you have to be able to structure the contracts the way that
Yes.
you're describing.
The
You have to
Eagles can keep them all.
right,
The
'cause they
Rams
give
can keep them all.
big signing bonuses,
Yes.
and they hit at different times, and they're obviously like, they can I think they will restructure Joe Burrow, but restructuring Joe Burrow alone, again, there has to be a willingness to do 3 mega deals at the same time. I think you're correct to be skeptical of that. And I think this is a good solution for Cincinnati because, I kept going back to, man, like it would be a really, really a disappointment if you were not to give it this offense in its current iteration one more shot. Now, again, if some team actually were to match it and you walk away 2 first, that's a huge W for them as well. Do you think that there's a possibility that'll happen, by the way? I don't.
I don't think so.
I think the 2 first thing is prohibitive.
Not for a non-quarterback or
It
like
didn't even happen for
Myles
Lamar
Garrett.
Jackson. Nobody
Yeah,
put in a
no, I
freaking
know.
call, right? So
I
to
know.
your point, yeah, I just don't see it happening.
Who's
So
who is the worst player that they would do that for? That the league would do that for?
I mean, it would be a quarterback.
You don't think like a Myles Garrett if he I'm saying hypothetically if he was his age right now and they transition
Like a
tag
Micah
him,
Parsons is a good
Micah
actual
Parsons, yeah.
possibility, right? I think teams are too. I mean, because really the question is like, would you trade for Micah Parsons, send 2 firsts, and then give him an extension, which is what you would be doing? Yeah, I think Micah Parsons. Teams would do it for Micah Parsons. Myles Garrett, possibly.
Mhm.
Maybe not. I don't think. Probably not Myles Garrett at his age, even though I would.
Yeah.
But okay. So back to Higgins though. So I think the question is just going to be, if there is no long-term deal, is he going to be content? Not content, but is he like, what's going to be the attitude aspect of that for Cincinnati? But then perhaps more importantly, or not more importantly, but for if you're not a fan of the Cincinnati Bengals, sort of the ripple effect this has on the rest of free agency, because Tee Higgins was the name we kept. There's so many teams that need number one wide receivers that have a lot of money. And if you take him out of the pool, I'm looking at the list of free agent receivers. Chris Godwin, who
Mhm.
obviously is coming off an injury, very different style of player. And then you're like, Diggs, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, Brandon Cooks. Like, there's just nobody
Oh my god.
anywhere. DeAndre Hopkins close to a Tee Higgins. So Devontae Adams would be actually a trade, or I guess the Jets are probably going to cut him. But
Yeah.
this, like, because those teams, Kevin, the Chargers, the Patriots, and the Panthers, and maybe the Commanders, another team that has a lot of money, like, I feel like this is a really big disappointment for them, because one of those teams I thought would have blown Tee Higgins out of the water.
I completely agree with that. Tee Higgins is probably very upset by this, and I there's nothing you can do about that. By the way, like Tee Higgins demanded a trade over a year ago. By the way, so did Trey Hendrickson. Nobody ignores a trade request like Mike Brown. He doesn't even like. There's not even like the Browns were like, oh, on the phone with reporters being like, yeah, this isn't going to go anywhere with Myles Garrett. Mike Brown doesn't even like. He's like, whatever. I'm going to keep on moving on. I'm going to sit in my golf cart and just keep watching practice. Nothing happening. Yes, it's a massive disappointment. And like I wasn't even when we went through I went through the exercise earlier when you gave me these questions, like mocking good destinations and stuff. Like I'm not even that fired up, because Chris Godwin change anybody's ceiling? Not really. Like Tee Higgins has the capability in the right situation to change a franchise. Nobody uses his length, or very few guys use their length better at the wide receiver position. He's like a power forward. I mean, like I was looking at some of the stats. The ability for him to rein in touchdowns, to rein in deep passes with a separation stats that are like, less than 2.5 yards. And I don't want to get too wonky on that, but like he's not wide open. Like he is a catch radius guy, and he's able to use guys' body leverage against them. Like he and Joe Burrow working together, it's beautiful football, beautiful football. And that's why I'm hoping this all gets resolved. Like when I'm coming from a very cynical Bengals standpoint, it is because of what the Bengals are. I want this to work. Like I want the Bengals to win a Super Bowl. I think the Bengals should be a really cool organization with amazing players and Joe Burrow and all that stuff. I'm cynical because of what I've seen in the past, but yeah, the free agency. I mean, like someone's got to come available on trade. Like people were saying to me earlier, the Packers should go out and get a wide receiver one. Who is that? Like I don't know who that is. Who's even available in trade? Like who's this year's Tyreek Hill who's going to randomly become available? I don't know if that's going to happen.
The names that people have been throwing out are Tyreek Hill and DK Metcalf, and maybe for Tyreek.
Wait, this year's Tyreek Hill is Tyreek Hill again.
I guess, yeah. No, it is literally Tyreek Hill again.
Surprise!
His agitation, whatever.
Yeah.
I maybe that could happen, honestly, right? I wouldn't trade DK if I was the Seahawks personally, but yeah, there's so many teams that are just like a Tee Higgins. This is literally the player they need, and so for him not to be available is. There's the other thing though. Even outside of the transition tag, let's say he's still a trade option, so it's out there. I mean, I guess I've just been so split on what the Bengals should do, because Tee Higgins, a fair value. First of all, Jamar Chase is going to top Justin Jefferson. We know this. So that's going to come in high 30s at least. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly how Justin, it was like 35, 36, I think, APY. So Higgins fair value is probably about $30 million a year, honestly. I
Yes.
was looking at like some of the wide receiver contracts. If you put him around just below Jefferson, Lamb, AJ, and above like Waddle, DJ Moore, this is about there. And then you have to pay Trey Hendrickson. And I guess I've been torn on this because from the Bengals point of view, like financially, they can do it. But for that to work, and this is why the whole Eagles, Joe Burrow bring up the Eagles thing kind of falls apart, you also have to draft well. And they have drafted so
Right.
unbelievably poorly the last few years that the roster, if they were to do this, it's going to look exactly the same for the most part.
You mean Jermaine Burton wasn't a good receiver option in the 4th round last year? He's not even going to make the team next year.
Some of these defensive players that they've drafted too. I mean, they're just the defensive,
Some
like
of the
looking
guys on
at
the
it.
line, like it has not been good. And normally, I mean, like the metaphor to the Cowboys extends normally to the fact that they usually draft pretty well. Like Mike Brown's whole thing was drafting famous guys from big schools for a long time, and the last couple of years, it has not worked at all.
So if let's take him off the table.
Yeah.
Assuming he's going to be a Bengal this year. How
Yeah.
much farther is open to, we'll see. I mentioned Godwin,
Mm-hmm.
and I would say Adams is another one that intrigues me because he's healthy. I think like teams like the Patriots, those are the 4. Like the Patriots, the Panthers, the Chargers, and the Commanders are kind of the 4 teams that I think are going to be linked to all of these big
Because they
receivers
have money.
because they have money. The Steelers are another one I'd throw out there.
Yeah.
I really like Godwin to the Steelers.
That literally that was mine.
You like that
But
matching?
yeah, I do. But Godwin's a fit for everybody.
Everybody,
like all 32 teams. And I was looking at some of the stats earlier, and basically Baker and Godwin led the league in quick throws. Like they literally, so he led the league in passes until he got hurt. He had the ankle injury, obviously. Obviously, we're assuming full health, full recovery, all that stuff. But until he got hurt, he was basically leading the league in passes short of the sticks that went beyond the sticks after catch. And I think when you hear that, like every single quarterback could benefit from that kind of guy. And sounds like he's a great guy in the locker room. Everybody loves him. It was one of those injuries where when he goes down, like all the beat reporters are like, I'm praying for this guy. It was one of those things where it was like
that's the other thing with Godwin. Everybody like he's the kind of guy you want on your
yes,
football.
everybody should, as long as the price is right, all 32 teams, including the Bucs, should be interested. They're not going to use the franchise tag on him. They've got an expensive roster. It sounds like there's every possibility that he could leave here. But yes, every team should be interested. If I'm Godwin, I'd probably go to the highest bidder, but I'm also, if maybe a couple $1 million is the difference between playing for the Steelers and the Panthers, maybe I'm thinking about Pittsburgh here.
Do the Steelers have a better quarterback situation than the Panthers, though?
No, but I think they're probably going to be a better team, right? Maybe.
Well, yeah, but I don't know. So yes, I agree about every team, but the Chargers do have a very good slot receiver, right? In Len McConkey. We love Tee Higgins to the Chargers because he's so clearly what they need. So I guess as a consolation prize, I don't hate the idea of Devontae Adams to the Chargers. He said he wants to play on the West Coast.
I completely agree.
Yeah. Although, a couple other options that'll be thrown out. Trades. Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
Deebo Samuel. See, those guys get linked to the Chargers because the Chargers want to run the ball and they're both really good. Yeah, they allow you to do that. I don't care I don't like that vision for the Chargers. I want Justin Herbert to throw the ball. I want him to throw the ball someone who can win outside the numbers.
Okay.
Jim
Harbaugh probably cares.
I'm not into the idea of let's bring in 30 whatever year old Deebo Samuel who's going to want a new contract just so that for his 3 yards per carry in the back. A little bit about Deebo. Hey, I would rather have Devontae Adams for the Chargers.
I'm going to throw out a name here, a team, and then I'm going to use it to unleash a take that I've been floating in my brain. I've tried to get it out on TV, haven't been able to. I'm going to mock both these guys as possibilities to the Broncos. Okay?
I like it. And I like the take.
One of the reasons I'm doing this is because I was thinking about offensive lines and the Eagles. Who can be the next Eagles? And what I'm going to do is take away the teams that are already nailed on Super Bowl contenders. I'm not going to say, oh, the Bills can be the next. Okay, we got you. The Ravens, we got you. All right.
Yeah.
But who could take a leap and all of a sudden they're just awesome in the trenches? Roster is awesome, elite talent in a bunch of different places. Like the actual lesson that the Eagles taught us is to have a top 5 position unit across the board. Like good, great. And if the Broncos level up just a little bit, maybe one more edge rusher. There's Zach Allen there, who's among the best at interior pressures.
Benito.
Yeah, like if they get one more, we know that Benito is elite. I thought I should have been a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Surtain, obviously, is one of the best defensive players in the league, and he's going to be for a long time. The offensive line, as I said, I think PFF graded them as the second best
They're
offensive
very
line in
good.
football after
Very
the
good.
Eagles. Whitworth was on my show in December, I think it was, and just said no one's talking enough about that team. Bo Nix has shown some ability here. We know they're skill guys. I think they're like a couple pieces away from taking like a real deal leap, and I think Sean Payton's going to treat it as such this offseason.
So Debo for the Broncos.
Yeah.
I don't hate it. I think about like the way Peyton used Marvin Mims this year, who's very
Oh, I thought you were going to say Taysom Hill.
no. He is on every show that he can go on, he's talked about how he wants a joker. He wants a Taysom Hill type this offseason. We'll see who he ends up adding. But
Debo.
I do not dislike the idea of Debo in this offense at all. I like the idea of Peyton and him. Cup also, I don't hate the idea of like in this offense. Both, by the way, like so, they're both cheap for the acquiring parties. So I think they're going to want certainly Debo, new contract. Obviously, both getting up in the years, but those two players,
who would you rather have? Who'd you rather have right now?
Cooper Kupp.
Okay.
Yeah, it's funny because like Debo, some of the advanced metrics still actually like him in terms of like his ability to get you yards after the catch, even above what's schemed up. But I just watch him and he's so clearly kind of. I mean, they're both obviously getting up in the years and not what they were a few years ago.
They're both very physical receivers who've taken a lot of punishment. Yeah, it's really hard to gauge how they age.
I would take Kupp. All right, let's put a pin on it for the receivers because those signings are going to start, when we'll see who gets tagged and who comes in. I've started doing the draft too, and it's not a great receiver draft either.
No.
So, like,
hey, did we do Diggs?
I don't. I mean, Diggs. He's there coming off of the injury.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Should he just go back to the Texans, or should the Patriots just gain
the Texans, by the way, could use Kupp and Debo. Whoa, I hadn't even thought about that. But that is a team that really needs skill players who can block.
Mm-hmm. Solve that.
There you go.
Sign them up.
The Patriots and the Chargers are the ones I just keep going back to where it's like they really just needed Tee Higgins.
Well, the Patriots need everything. I'm honestly, I don't want to bomb on them yet. I'll bomb on them later, but they need everything except quarterback.
Yeah, but they really need. They have like a lot of kind of slot yak type guys. They need a number one, and I guess Ted McMillan is the one who I think probably fits that prototype the most, but that's pretty rich to take him.
It's pretty early. I was going to say
they're going to take a tackle probably, so we'll see who's available. All right, the other free agent group that I want to talk about, other than the quarterbacks, is 2 offensive linemen, both of whom are on very good teams, Trey Smith and Ronnie Stanley. I think these are really difficult decisions. That's why I wanted to talk to you about them because I think both of them are going to command quite a bit of money. We can start with Trey Smith, and they're both on teams that are contenders, so teams that should be all in every year. I am not sure what either of these teams are going to do about it. Let's start with Kansas City, right? Kansas City, obviously the offensive line was their undoing in the Super Bowl. This was not a particularly complex situation. It was kind of Tampa Bay Redux. But Smith at this point he's going to become the highest paid guard, I suspect. Looking at guard salaries, that would put him above Chris Lindstrom. Dickerson are the 2 guys, both. So you're looking at over $20 million a year.
Definitely.
Kansas City does not have a lot of money, Kevin. And they've been drafting, trying to find rookies who can replace some of these guys. Um, they have decisions to make, really quite a few decisions on the offensive line. Right now, you're pretty plugged into this organization. Like right now, what do you think the most likely outcome is? Do you think they keep Trey Smith or do you think he's gone?
I mean, they just don't have a lot of money for this. They
Yeah.
just don't. And then the concern is, so after the Tampa Bay game, which you alluded to, Brett Veach found a dejected Patrick Mahomes near the elevator bank and said, "We're going to fix the offensive line." And if you remember, they got 5 new starters and he nailed it. And they won 2 Super Bowls because of it. And he can do that again. You alluded, they've had some misses, but they can play the free agency game. They can work the bargain bin. They can do all that stuff. I just think at some point it becomes a financial impossibility. If let's say the Bears decide, probably correctly, they need Trey Smith and they're going to pay any amount of money to do that. Now, obviously, the franchise tag precludes that, but I'm just saying that's you're just getting into a situation where if you lose Trey Smith, you went from one of the best offensive lines in football about a year ago to 2 of those guys, essentially, Creed Humphrey
Yeah.
and Joe Thuney. And Joe Thuney was playing out of position. You fix that in some way. I would rather attack left tackle and figure that out, whether that's via trade, get an aging guy, work free agency, whatever it is. I just think they have so many holes. It's hard for me to guess, but I'm gonna guess Trey Smith walks. He's gonna be so expensive.
I think it's just the price. I think that and they can't afford. I don't think the tag is an option
No,
for
they
them.
can't. A lot of those teams. I was looking at the ESPN franchise tag guide. I don't know if you saw it. It's like team by team. And like a lot of the teams, like the Ravens, were just like, yeah, can't use it. Don't have any cap space. See you later. Like some of these contending teams, they just literally, we say, oh, they can use the tag, but there's just not a lot of money available.
There's some interesting guards in free agency. We'll see what happens to Zach Martin if he keeps playing or retires.
Yeah.
Brandon Scherf, James Daniels, Kevin Zeitler, Makari, who was pretty good at guard for the Ravens this year, Will Hernandez, Nate Herbig. So I could see them just kind of going middle class there instead of top of the line. I feel like with Kansas City, the goal this year has to be like, let's just get this group average, right? Like, I don't think you need an amazing offensive line for Patrick Mahomes. I really don't. You just can't have the types of holes that they had that showed up in the Super Bowl. So, yeah, there's a lot of free agents on defense as well, but that I think is going to be tricky. And if he's available, I mean, you mentioned the Bears. There's quite a few teams I could think of that need interior offensive line help that might be willing to break the bank.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think Brett Veach is probably the most important person in football right now. Because if he nails this, then here we go. Like the music keeps going, the party keeps going. If he doesn't, a lot more teams than the Eagles are going to overwhelm them next year in the trenches. Like the Eagles, the idea that the Eagles were able to get, in the first half at least, 50% pressure rate on 0 blitzes, that's players, not plays. That has nothing to do with Vic Fangio. I saw, it was so funny afterwards, like masterclass from Vic Fangio. Yeah, there was some of that, but it was mostly just a bunch of dudes mauling the Chiefs offensive line up front. And the Chiefs have to reckon with that. And Veach, this is his moment. And he had told me a couple of years ago, he said, I have the best building blocks in football, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. And the beauty of football is that that's not enough. The other thing he told me was you have to be all in every year. The Bengals have probably learned that, but he understands there's no step back with Mahomes. There's none. You have to perform every single year. You have to keep him upright. You have to keep him healthy. Like there's so many things. There's so much pressure, especially on that left tackle position. He said, 6 left tackles in 6 years, something like that. Like I don't know if there's anybody with more pressure on him right now than Brett Veach.
You mentioned the Bears, by the way, who I think are a really good name for Trey Smith.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to throw out another one to you and introduce a hypothetical. If you're the Vikings, who have the Bears have $62 million. I mean, this is all going to change, but they both have a lot. They're both comfortable right now. Mm-hmm. If you're the Vikings, do you rather go on to JT McCarthy but improve the interior of the offensive line, which is the problem, or do you rather pay Sam Darnold? Because we're going to talk about Sam Darnold later, but he's going to cost way more than Trey Smith, which is hilarious because like one player is obviously near the top of the position, one is not. I'm pretty sure if I'm the Vikings, I'd rather pay Trey Smith.
I agree. What would you do if you were the Brett Veach right now? Would you find the money to keep Trey Smith somehow?
You gotta figure out the left tackle situation,
I
man.
agree, which is also an expensive
But
problem.
you have to okay, I think you have to make
And,
some
and
decisions. Are you completely taking the L on Suamataia, who was the rookie they drafted last year, who came in and he was bad, but he was a
I
rookie?
don't know.
They
That's to
know.
me.
Yeah,
That's to me. Andy Heck question. Andy Heck is like an awesome offensive
right.
line coach. Can you fix this guy?
That's what you have to figure out.
Can you fix this
It's
guy?
not great.
They also lost. This is important. This is important. They lost Brant Tillis, who was their cap guru for a long time. He's now the number 1.5 in Carolina, and that stuff matters. This
They
is the whole
have
thing when people talk about how hard it is to build an empire in football. The guys get more expensive, but more importantly, you have a brain drain with coaches and executives. And guys like Brent Tillis go live in North Carolina, make a bunch of money, and all of a sudden you can't fit all these guys under the cap.
I'm not gonna do it again because I listed their free agents, I think, last week, but it's a lot of guys. A lot of guys on defense, and I think you'd rather bring back a few of those instead of I
I
think
have a question.
yeah.
What? Not to hijack this, but this is about a chief ceiling conversation. If Travis Kelsey retires, that does what to the chief ceiling?
Lowers it.
No, but does it make them like what? Where I understand that, but like relative to the Ravens and the Bills and the Bengals,
Oh, yeah. I think I have I think it's a big loss. I also think though getting Rashee Rice, depending on his health, might compensate for that in some ways. I think like the loss of Rashee Rice was kind of slept on this second. I mean,
yeah.
killing at the end,
Are
but
they going to lose him again?
oh right, 'cause there's a potential penalty suspension looming. I don't know. That's an interesting storyline. We should probably follow. All right, nobody wants to listen to Chiefs talk anymore. I've just so much Chiefs talk lately. I want to talk about Ronnie Stanley because I think this is
Yeah.
another interesting choice. So Stanley, free agent,
Hmm.
took a pay cut and then played great this year and also
Hmm.
was healthy. He played the entire season. So contract year, Ronnie Stanley set himself up nicely. Tackle is more money. You've got Trent Williams making 27, Darisaw making 26, average annual value. Darisaw, who's younger, got more guaranteed. Tristan Wirfs was the last deal, 28, 52 million guaranteed. So Ronnie Stanley's not going to make that much because Ronnie Stanley's 30, early 30s, 30, I think. So he's older than Darisaw and Wirfs, but he's going to get a pretty penny. The Ravens are interesting because they have been pretty studiously adding to the offensive line over the years. Um, Drafted Roger Rosengarten, who's excellent at right tackle this
Hmm.
year, played some left tackle before in college. So I am not sure with this one as well. I think there's a good chance the Ravens are similar to the Chiefs. I think there's a good chance that they get priced out of the Ronnie Stanley market. I am not sure that's a great decision though. If both him and because you got McCarry also who was guard leaving, that's a little bit more change on the offensive line that I'm comfortable with for them.
Yeah. So Ravens bottom 10 in the league in cap space. The tag for an offensive lineman is going to be 25 million. It's not going to happen. I think Ronnie Stanley's market is going to be massive. I think a team like the Patriots do whatever. The Patriots had the worst tackles I've ever seen last year. Like the worst. There was a game last year, so I was lucky enough to watch games last year with Justin Pugh. We did the Sunday radio show together, so I could run things by him on trench play. And there was a play where one of the Patriots tackles was putting so little effort into it, and I brought it up to Pew, and we were marveling at it. A couple plays later, they were like, "Oh, there's been a benching," and I said, "Oh, thank God they got that guy out." It was the other guy they benched, and it's like, wait, what is happening with the Patriots tackles? I've never seen anything like it. And they had guys. Obviously, there was health issues all season long. They were cycling through guys. Guys were out of position, and now people are wondering if they should just overdraft a guy, even if nobody is worth it in the top 5 just to fix that. But I think Ronnie Stanley at a premium, just to
Yeah,
get an adult in that room, is going to be worth it.
he will. There's. It's interesting. I actually, by the way, I just saw a team I met. I was looking at teams who might need him. Patriots are the obvious one, unless they draft Will Campbell, who seems to be like almost chalked to them at fourth or
For
yeah. There aren't that many teams who need left tackles. I was kind of surprised I'm looking at the teams with cap space. There was one team I left out of the guard conversation that I would like to retcon, the Chargers. Couldn't you see after all this talk about Tee Higgins, Jim Harbaugh just going out and being like, we're going to pay Trey Smith? Like, because in the Chargers' interior offensive line was awful at the end of last season.
They
so.
were.
But tackle wise, like the Commanders, they
Yeah.
drafted Brandon Coleman is pretty good for them. I'm looking the Steelers, maybe Dan Moore Jr. walks.
Yes.
I don't know.
They've had some draft misses.
The Broncos or the Rams are losing both their left tackles. So the free agent left tackles, you got, it's not Cam Robinson, Joe Boom, and Larry
Yeah.
Jackson, who are the Rams, Tyron Smith, Morgan. It's pretty old. Morgan Moses, Trent Brown. So I think you're right about Ronnie Stanley, but I thought there would be more obvious destinations for him, and I'm not seeing that many. So they might get a more reasonable market for him than it would seem.
Can I ask you a question? Do you think that the Eagles effect that I keep talking about, like Alec Lewis had a really good piece in the Athletic Buzz the other day about the Vikings, but do you think that there will be guys who get either overdrafted or overpaid because owners walk into their front office and are like, hey guys, we got to be good in the trenches? Like, I honestly, again, we overrate this all the time.
Yeah.
And what's funny about it, and Lewis's piece was great because it like pointed out that the Vikings and the Eagles have drafted the exact amount of trench guys, like the same since 2018. The difference is the Eagles hit on theirs and the Vikings didn't. So the lesson is draft good players. We knew that. But like, do you think there's going to be renewed emphasis on that?
I think the draft, you'll just constantly see that more in the draft. Let's keep taking swings. And I like your point though, about how like just because teams try it doesn't mean they're as good at it as the Eagles. I mean, the Bengals have drafted offensive linemen and defensive linemen the last few years. Like, it's just not worked.
They're good.
Several of these
or they
teams
don't have the coaches or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, right. They don't have Jeff Stellan.
Did you see? So
tough.
Lewis unearthed this quote from Howie in 2021. I had not seen it anywhere else. Have you seen it?
No.
It's from Howie after the 2021 draft. They took Landon Dickerson. I'm sure there are some people sick and tired of seeing the Philadelphia Eagles take linemen, Howie Roseman said, but that's how we won a championship, and that's how we're going to win another championship. Stud. Stud.
All right. We'll see what happens with these players. I think the Ravens should bring back one of Stanley or Macari. I don't like the idea of like them just saying, hey, we've got Lamar. It's going to be fine. You know, like I
hope it's not a strategy.
No. All right. Let's take a break, come back, talk about the quarterbacks, and then we can wrap with Myles Garrett after that. All right. So before we get to the free agent quarterbacks, I want to talk about the growing buzz around a Matthew. Just actually a couple quarterbacks I want to talk about being traded. One who I think was maybe getting a little bit less interest right now, but
one of these guys on this list I had not heard as a trade candidate, but go ahead.
Let's start with the big one, Matthew Stafford.
Yeah.
So this I did not believe when I heard it. And then in New Orleans, it was all anybody was talking about. Was that your experience as well?
I talked to some people about some other stuff other than Stafford. But yeah, it came up.
No, I was walking around. Do you remember Matthew Stafford?
Yeah.
Matthew Stafford. I was at,
it was really impossible.
At 2 a.m. Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford was on the tip of everyone's tongue.
I went to see Blink-182 and Tom DeLonge just would not stop talking about that. And
Wasn't
aliens.
He wearing a Rams jersey?
That was Mark Hoppus. He's wearing a Jared Verse jersey.
Yeah.
Cool. Tom DeLonge is a San Diego guy who's wearing a Padres hat. He probably, I will say there are people pointing out there was a tough look for the Spanos family that Blink-182, the quintessential San Diego kids, have adopted the Rams. Tough one.
Woo!
All right. Anyway.
All right, let's get into it. So there is a lot of rumors about this. The Giants are a team that are being rumored. So let me set the table here first on Stafford and why this is even a thing. Stafford wanted a new contract last year. They restructured to give him more money. As a result, because of that last restructuring, he has 1 year left. Right now, his remaining year with the Rams has a $50 million cap hit, but it's only $27 million in cash coming his way. Not a lot in guarantees. So he wants, I think the important context here is he wants a new contract. So when we talk about the Rams exploring the idea of trading him, on its face, you're like, whoa, you guys literally almost beat the team that won the Super, not almost beat, Eagles fans don't yell at me, but you certainly put up more of a fight than the Kansas City Chiefs. Why would you trade that guy? That doesn't make any sense. You are like way ahead of schedule with your young defense. You've got these amazing, Puka Nacua. We saw Stafford, when he's hot, is as good as any quarterback in the NFL. He was hot at the end of that game. The context is he wants a new deal, and he's 37 years old, and the Rams might not want to give him the sort of deal that he wants, whereas a team like the Giants very much would.
Jordan Rodriguez reported basically that they're not too hot on the idea of a huge financial commitment and guarantees to a quarterback that old. And the postseason presser,
old? Do we think it's old?
he's old enough to go to a Blink-182 concert. I'll leave it at that.
He's younger than us. Or me. He's younger, older than you, I think.
Slightly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But we were in college at the same time, so it's kind of the same deal. But I think that I guess Jordan pointed out like the postseason presser, they were very non-committal on anything.
Yeah.
And I think it's so I agree with you. Like, part of me, I hear so many things. Everybody thinks they're a Shanahan McVay expert. Everybody thinks they're like in with the crew. And so they've all got, but then they all have different explanations for things. Like, some people are like, oh, McVay never wants to work with another young quarterback again, right? Or they'll say, oh, actually, those guys all, and this is not a McVay specific thing, they all think they could do it with like Matt Schaub. They all think they could win a Super Bowl with Matt Schaub as quarterback, right? Like that's the whole thing.
Really good in 2012,
Yeah, no, like they all thought in like 2017, yeah, give me Schaub. And so, but then I've heard people say like, McVay really likes having Matthew Stafford. Like, he elevated everything. It was a scheme expansion. Like, we saw year over year what that looked like. He didn't have to think about starting John Wofford. Is that his name? Wolford. He just signed somewhere. Good for him. But I don't. It's hard for me to predict. I would not be surprised if someone says, I want 2 or 3 years of quarterback stability. I remember when our valued colleague Alex Smith joined Washington. And it was after the Kirk Cousins thing, and they had been on this treadmill with Cousins with the franchise tag and all that stuff. I remember asking somebody in Washington, I was like, that was candidly giving him a new contract, all that stuff at his age, it was a risky deal. So I said, well, what are you doing this for? And they said, because we just wanted stability, because we just wanted a guy to where we're not all anxious all the time. And that's not a great answer a lot of the time. But I think that I understand, like, if you're the Giants, you're just like, hey, we can get 3 years of stability. We're not going to get anywhere else. I would understand that impulse. That resets the clock for Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, which job protection is, by the way, spoiler alert, the number one priority of every single person in the NFL, whether that's, the best GM in the league or the worst. It resets the clock. It gives them an instant ceiling mover as far as what Malik Neighbors can do. He'd make the line look better. It improves everything around you. So I wouldn't be surprised if a team like that just Godfather offered. Also, I would trade up for Cam Ward if I was the Giants, but I can see the idea of saying like, okay, we can take the best player available at 3 and then still have a good quarterback for 3 years.
I completely understand it from the perspective of the Giants. I like Cam Ward. I'm going to obviously go into further depth on these quarterbacks in the draft as we go along. I would rather have 3 years of Matthew Stafford playing at his level than these rookie quarterbacks, personally, based on what I've seen.
Tread very carefully.
I know sometimes fans love the mystery box of certainly everything that comes
mystery
with
here with Cam Ward.
But I get it from I think the Rams perspective to me is the one I'm still kind of working through, because I love your point about like I hear so many different things about like McVay and what he wants and his confidence in taking any quarterback and making them great. But just on its face, I struggle with this because this is a team that is really good. And if they were to trade Stafford, I mean, again, the kind of compensation you'd get for this certainly factors in as well. I have no idea what it would be, by the way. I haven't heard anyone speculate. But it's not an insignificant cap hit to move on from him in a trade. I think pre-June 1st, it would be $45 million. They would, if it was post, they would split that up a little bit. And I just like, I don't know, famous last words with Sean McVay and how good he is. But like, as a Seahawks fan, I would be glad to see this man out of the NFC West. And listen, again, maybe it is smart term. This is a team that in a front office and a coach that has earned the right to do these kinds of big swings. They earned it when they swung for Stafford,
That's
and they would certainly have that kind of credibility on the way out. But I would be a little nervous about it if I was a Rams fan.
I think I was going to bring that up, the big swings, because the last couple of years, because they've had such cap problem and they were in shedding mode and reset mode, and a bunch of guys retired. Because of that, we've forgotten how aggressive they are and how they've never been afraid of anything. And I think that when they traded for Jalen Ramsey, nobody was doing that. Like, they basically set the market on what a star player was getting traded at that time. And so they're a forward-thinking front office. They're always looking at different ways. Like, I would not be surprised at anything the Rams do. I wouldn't be surprised if they somehow
same.
got a great quarterback
Totally.
again this offseason. They're able to move stuff the way they were able to take, like, they
Yes.
basically invented taking on a bunch of dead money, right? They were able, the FM pick strategy was incredible. And because, by the way, they know they have confidence in hitting on 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rounds. Like, they are, in a weird way, they've become an underrated front office because they've had to get
But they've
conservative
not
the past couple of years
Yeah. But they've
because
not
they won a
drafted
Super Bowl.
but they've not drafted quarterbacks. I think that's the one
Yes.
thing where I would be nervous about this. Like, they've drafted so well at all these other positions. They drafted Stetson Bennett. I mean, it was like 5th round or something,
That was
but,
bad.
like,
Not good.
in this draft, I'd be nervous about it. This to me could go in so many different directions. It could all just be posturing on the part of both sides because he wants money. Matthew Stafford, by the way, I was playing up his contract to try to figure out the dead money. Holy smokes, that dude has made a lot of money. I mean, he is
Yeah.
one of, like, low-key the all-time NFL earners in NFL history. Let's actually kind of look at it from that third angle, which we haven't even addressed. Is it really worth it to Matthew Stafford?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. So I've made this
know.
argument before, and every single time, every time I'm like, hey, why don't like, you always see there's always like a Reddit thread every 6 months, like, why doesn't LeBron just play for the minimum and you make it up in
Win a
Nike money or
championship,
whatever?
yeah.
And it's like, the easiest thing to spend is somebody else's money.
I know,
Players like money. I
but
like money.
is it really worth it to go from the Rams, where you're so comfortable and you've got Puka Nacua and Sean McVay and this, to throw, I guess, Malik Neighbors is a draw, and the Giants? I don't know, man.
New York is a concept.
Yeah, his wife could podcast out in New York pretty easily.
I have a podcast studio. She's welcome to
Listen,
come here.
you're right. Like me, it's very easy for me to be like, what's the difference between, $25 and $35 million a year if you've already made 300 X millions dollars and whatever? I don't know.
As someone
Listen.
who's in that stratosphere, I'd say it's significant. Hey, would you don't want to get mad at me. Nobody get mad at me.
Okay.
Would the Giants take a pick swap in the first round for Matthew Stafford?
Were the Rams picking?
26th. Is that too? So 3
I
for
would do it if
26.
I'm the Giants. I would
Okay.
absolutely do that.
Okay.
No question.
Okay.
And then the Rams could take, or the Rams could take.
The Rams could take a
like
quarterback.
Sanders if he's there. Is he going to be there? I don't know.
I don't know. You so much of this. We're
So
gonna
wait,
get
so
into,
the Raiders are 7th, right?
yeah.
Dude, the
So the
Giants.
only teams selecting in front of you are the Browns and the Titans.
Yeah. So
And
the
that's
Titans are the key to the whole
because-
thing, because if the
Yeah.
Titans don't go quarterback, I would be shocked if the Browns don't go. I think the Browns will go quarterback. Oh, okay. So the Giants are 3. Pardon me. So it goes
Yeah.
Giants at 3, then Patriots, Jags, we know aren't taking quarterback, Raiders at 6. Pardon me. Then the Jets. God, those last final wins and losses, the Raiders falling behind New York, so impactful.
Can
So
I
the
say
Rams
something?
would go from 26 to
20 to 3.
Oh yeah. If you're the Giants, do you do that? I would do it.
Okay. Did we solve this? Send it in. Let's send it to league office. Hey, can I say something? Can I drop a nugget? Because I haven't recorded a episode that is for my show that's like draft focused or whatever. In the last couple days, I did Shedeur Sanders interview at the Super Bowl, and I've never gotten more feedback and questions from NFL teams. And I would say it was a handful of teams that reached out, and I would say there are some teams. I'm not going to do it for privacy reasons, but there are teams with quarterbacks now who have become. I reading the tea leaves based on their questions to me. It feels like there might be
They're sniffing around.
some uh some appetite to move up because possibly maybe they think because it's not a quarterback heavy draft or because people are in love with these prospects that the price might be lower and they're getting intrigued by these prospects. That is how I am reading the tea leaves based on entirely people reaching out to me about my interview with Shedeur Sanders. I think there's a 20% chance I'm not crazy here.
Well, the Rams, I'm not saying that they're the ones reaching
The
out.
Rams are not one of them.
But the Rams are certainly a team that I think I am going to start thinking about in the context of a potential trade up, move around as we consider this in the as we consider Matthew Stafford potentially being on the move. I'm gonna text. I have some guesses as to who you might be talking about.
Yeah. Some are obvious. Some are extremely obvious. They're the teams that have been linked
Saints.
to we're not doing that on this show.
Okay.
The Rams are not one. I would not have brought up the Rams
Yeah.
after that. Like I would not have do that to anybody there. But yeah, I think we solved the pick swap thing and we'll just send it to the league office.
The other trade candidate I was going to bring up was, so Gino's been thrown around. I don't think that's happening. Kirk Cousins is the one that I do want to talk to you a little bit about, because he is an extraordinarily expensive backup quarterback at the moment. The Falcons are not going to cut him. That would cost $65 million this summer.
Good stuff, guys.
If they were to trade him, there would still be a pretty hefty cap charge. Although, if it was a post June 1st designation, they could spread it out a little bit and save some money. The new team, however, it would be very expensive, $35 million and $10 million roster bonus. So the Falcons would probably have to eat some of that. I guess I question the one more piece to this Cousins puzzle. Super Bowl week, he was told, I can't remember what show he was on, but he was said that he was actually hurt week 10, right before his horrible losing streak, which raises the question of why Kirk Cousins was playing then if he was so hurt. Because we were all like, should they put in Michael Penix Jr.? And they're like, no. Cousins gives us the best chance to win. Well, clearly he didn't. If he was hurt, so that
whole year, it was the strangest thing. One of the strangest sagas in NFL history.
So if he's healthy, though, let me just kind of, do you think another team, given how bad the options are, should even be interested at the cost that we're talking about?
So I immediately made the connection between the Browns and Kirk Cousins, Kevin Stefanski, the fact that they could get him and then they don't have to take a quarterback with the first or second pick, Shedeur Sanders, if Cam Ward goes 1, whatever, right? And then I thought, again, job protection. If Kirk Cousins goes to the Browns and they go 5-12, doesn't everybody get fired?
Yeah.
If they draft Shedeur Sanders and they go 5-12, don't we have to give them 2 more years to figure it out?
At least some of them. Who knows? Yeah, I think your take is correct. Yeah. It's a lot riskier for Stefanski.
It's a lot riskier for an injured Kirk Cousins to be the end of the project in Cleveland rather than resetting the timeline. Again, this is not specific to these folks. It is specific to the league that the number one need is to everybody in charge to pay their mortgage.
He also has a no trade clause, by the way, so we can throw out teams, but he would actually have to be willing to do it. The Browns are a team I think you would be trade. Hey, if I were Cousins, they obviously they're losing some of the offensive line. They need to address that, but at least you have pieces there. I mean, the problem with the Kirk Cousins trade is like a lot of the teams that would be option, like the Jets are not going to trade for another 30-something-year-old quarterback coming off the Achilles. I really don't believe that. Maybe, but
I don't know if it does. I do want to unleash. Sorry, I do want to unleash my Falcons fans are cool take. 10 seconds.
Falcons fans, my favorite.
Because I'm so happy they're cool. Because if they weren't, and there's fan bases, especially like it's the process Sixers being the worst example, is they with this Penix Cousins thing, they go, "Oh, you're not smart enough to have gotten it."
No,
You
no,
didn't
no.
know
They're
where we
not
were
like
going.
that. No, no, no. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You don't
No,
understand
no,
what
no,
we're
no, no,
doing.
no, no. I love this point. I have always long said that Falcons fans are amongst my favorite.
You're so
And
cool.
instead of being like, you guys just didn't understand our big brain GM,
Yeah.
they're correctly mad about how everything played out. Like
They're just like, what a disaster.
when the Kirk Cousins injury news came out,
Yeah.
all the Falcons fans I saw were like, what the F? Which is the
I
correct
love them.
reaction.
I
By the way.
love them. Okay, you said the
Great
Raiders.
parents. No, no, the Steelers.
Oh, the Steelers for Kirk Cousins.
Don't hate
Yes,
it.
I'd rather have
Don't hate
Aaron
it.
Rodgers. I'd rather have Aaron Rodgers than Kirk Cousins. Aaron Rodgers showed more last year.
Is it
Mike
worth it?
Tomlin manages personalities well. Sounds like Aaron Rodgers is willing to It sounds like he was, if we believe and I do, the pleading New York Post report. Maybe he comes into Pittsburgh with a slightly different attitude, although you don't want him to change his attitude entirely. I am probably more pro Aaron Rodgers than you are in this specific instance.
It is. There are some things that make sense about it. One of which is, God, I don't think Arthur Smith and Aaron Rodgers are a good fit, though. But it's definitely there's only two teams that I think are even possibilities for Rodgers in my mind. The other one is the Tennessee Titans. The Steelers are not.
What about podcasting?
Well, the
Who
other thing
is a
about Rodgers is it'll be cheap, so that certainly has appeal. All right, wait, let's actually wrap up this quarterback situation by playing a game.
Okay.
Which is each of us in this game of quarterback musical chairs. Let's pick the 4 landing spots right now for Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, and Sam Darnold. These are the 4 free agents because Kirk Cousins would be a trade. We talked about Stafford. That's a trade option. Obviously, Stafford, once that domino falls, everything kind of shapes into place. Okay, let's go first. Sam Darnold, Raiders seems like the most likely outcome to me. What about you?
I know it may not work cap-wise, and they don't have much money to spend. Can we not figure out the Jets thing?
It's not happening. Come on.
I know. I just wanted to throw it out there. I know Raiders are mine too. It makes the most sense, but I just wanted to throw it out there.
Okay.
I wish it could happen. Who's going to play quarterback for the Jets next year?
Justin Fields. That's my pick for the Jets.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Who do you got for the Jets?
I honestly, that's why I asked. I don't really know. I mean, I don't know. Would Russell Wilson make sense, sir?
So Wilson and Fields are the ones where I keep putting them in the same place because even they're very different. Well, they're not actually that different, but I think the same types of teams will be in the market for them.
Who is more annoying, Rodgers or Wilson? From a football standpoint, I don't mean personally, whatever. I just mean like it takes a lot.
It's interesting that they actually have something in common, which is they're both not plug and play quarterbacks. They're both not guys where you could say, hey, this is our offense. We'll make it work with you. Obviously, we'll build it around your skill set. If you get Aaron Rodgers, you're running the Aaron Rodgers offense. If you get Russell Wilson, you're running the Russell Wilson offense. These are quarterbacks we've seen now over many years. We know how they play. So I think that has to factor into it for some, like, do you have a play caller? The Browns are the team where like they have such a specific vision. And I think that they tried to build an offense around the quarterback. It failed miserably because of the quarterback. I think the Browns are going to draft one. I think the Titans are not going to draft a quarterback. So that I keep going back to Aaron Rodgers for them. Doesn't that make the most sense to you?
For me, Rodgers to Pittsburgh makes the most sense.
Right. Okay.
Like I feel like that is by far the most logical option for both parties. The Steelers are ready to win now. They can't take that many chances. I've seen people say they want to keep working with Justin Fields. He worked with Justin Fields last year, and he benched him for Russell Wilson, and the team seemed to get better. And so I don't know. Yeah, you can bring Fields back on an affordable deal, but I don't think that's the long-term answer when you have a bunch of guys who are ready to win now and a defense that can win, blah, blah, blah. With Fields, I'm wondering if there's not an obvious starting spot for him. do we think Indianapolis says, come on down and let's see if he can't beat out Anthony Richardson? Something that Fields would probably be able to do and want to do.
I think that makes sense. I also think like the Rams, if the Matthew Stafford domino falls, that's a team.
Well, what about Rodgers for the Rams if the Matthew Stafford domino falls?
I don't think Sean McVay wants that. The Rams are such an under center offense. He doesn't want to completely change everything for quarterback that way. There aren't that many. It's funny for all the talk about like all these other teams need quarterbacks. Like, who are the other teams that the Saints, I think, are going to ride it out with Derek Carr just financially?
Correct.
I
think. But I also think part of it is at the top of the draft, what are the teams that say we're actually going to take Travis Hunter instead of a quarterback? Or does something crazy happen where Hunter and Carter go 1-2 and then
I think the Titans go non-quarterback, and then you've got
Browns.
The Giants. Yeah, so the Giants would be. This is why the Stafford thing is, because I actually feel like if Stafford doesn't go to New York, I could see them riding out with like Russ for a year as they figure stuff out. That would not be like a great job preservation strategy for those guys, but
extremely.
It's very hard to figure this all right now while the Stafford chip falls in the air. But okay, so just to be in the business of predictions again, let me do this again.
Yeah.
Let's say Stafford goes to the Giants.
Okay.
Then I'm going to go Browns quarterback, Raiders Darnold, Titans Rodgers, Jets Fields, Steelers run it back with Russ. I know that they'd be mad about that. I'm just throwing it out there. And then the Rams go with like a bridge guy to maybe trade for a guy. Maybe they're like the Jackson Dart team or something.
Who are the bridge guys available? Because the problem is, I feel like
really
like Baker Mayfield reinvented the bridge guy.
Yeah.
Because he signed a $30 million contract. Like everybody, you always see this halfway through the season where it's like, I'd take so-and-so at $10 million. Well, anybody's worth $10 million, a quarterback becomes worth $30 million very quickly.
There aren't that many options, which is why I think Darnold is going to make a decent amount of money. I think the Baker contract is a good sort of baseline for what we're going to be looking at. So you mentioned it was about 3 years, $100 million. So low 30s. 2 of those are really guaranteed. So let's say that's the contract. I mentioned the Raiders. Is there any other team, we've been talking about all these teams that need quarterbacks, that you think makes sense for Sam Darnold?
No, I don't think the Giants are going to want to do it, right? Maybe. Is that a job preservation move? Feels like that could be a disaster. Oh. Who's the number one don't get fired guy on this board? Not counting the draft picks, because the draft picks are don't get fired guys.
The Giants.
No, but what I'm saying is like,
that you could take.
Saves your job.
Well, Matthew Stafford is, which is why we keep going back to that.
You overpay Matthew Stafford.
By the way, then like if you're Sam Darnold, the Rams would be an awesome place. But like if you're the Rams, is paying Sam Darnold $30 million a year instead of paying Matthew Stafford $40 million a year, like that feels like hustling backwards to me. So
what if? So are in this scenario are the Vikings tagging and trading? Or they're just letting him walk. This is the big question. Can Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell like work the combine and be like, hey, will you pay Sam Darnold $35 million? That's the biggest question, because if he can walk, that's a completely different scenario. If you have to trade a second-round pick for him, it changes the calculus entirely.
Yeah. This is going to be, I think, this Stafford thing is going to be the number one story at the combine, but this will be number 2, how they proceed with Sam Darnold. And, miss me with the like, go do right by him and let him walk and get a contract. Like that's not, I don't think that's going to be how this plays out.
How did you right by Sam Darnold?
I know, right?
He was there for a year.
Well, he literally was there for a year and like rebuilt his career, and now he's going to get paid because of it. Okay, before my dog literally breaks through this wall, I don't know if you hear him.
I have a child outside doing the same thing.
It's almost his time to eat.
I don't know where you...
I do want to talk briefly about Myles Garrett with you. I got into this already a little bit, the possibility of him being traded. So
you got into it with Myles Garrett in a wonderful interview on Radio Row.
With Myles Garrett. The dust has settled a little bit. Like this was kind of the big shocking news the Super Bowl week. He was just out there talking about it, setting the parameters. As there's it's an interesting one because we don't even have to talk about it really from the team perspective. Everybody wants Myles Garrett, but from the Browns perspective, it's dubious. It's a big cap hit, and how much they would actually get for him is debatable. I've heard lots of different opinions of that, which has been interesting to me because he is one of the, if not the best defensive players in the NFL. What is your sense of whether this is going to happen right now, February 18th? Because this is something that could take a lot of time.
So I asked about it, and I was told no.
Reporting.
I tried to trade for him. I tried to give him my pod, and they were like, no. I asked. I talked to some people, and I said, is this going to happen? And they were like, we don't want it to go anywhere. It's not going to go anywhere. I've heard that a lot in my life. No, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. No. Damn it. That's not what I meant.
It's not going to go anywhere.
This is not going to go anywhere. Please never contact me again. Heard that a lot. How did you get this number?
That's a tough fight with the glasses.
Yeah, that was a tough one. Damn. No, but every time there's like there's an old I don't know how I'm gonna recover from this. There's an old your financial reporting background.
Yeah.
There's an old saying that like every mergers and acquisition rumor is true. Every trade rumor eventually becomes true. And every time, I mean, like, there's some guy, like, you know, if one of those aggregator accounts was like, should the Chiefs move Mahomes? Like, yeah, there's never going to be smoke behind that. But I think when someone says I want to be traded, I think you look into it, either whether that's clandestine or not. My feeling is this. I still maintain that no NFL team has ever traded a player they wanted to keep. Like Aaron Rodgers demanded a trade.
Yeah, and
Packers were like, "Oh no, sorry, we didn't get that text for 2 years, 2.5 years." Russell Wilson, relationship was over in Seattle. They kept going until the wheels fell off.
That's a good point.
No, those sort of stars, like if you maybe the Chiefs with Tyreek Hill, but they also understood how crazy their roster would be with a $32 million Tyreek Hill. That'd be crazy. It would look something special on offense, but they wouldn't have as good of trenches, all that stuff, right? That's probably the closest thing you're going to get to it. Maybe Devontae Adams as well. But for me, I'm thinking, do the Browns with a new quarterback, is it maybe time with an aging roster for a hard reset? And I'm sure they're asking themselves that question.
I think the devil is in the details, and it really does depend on the return. I know that's like a bit of a cop-out right now.
Totally agree.
But I was hearing like, oh, maybe a first. I'm like, whoa, then no. If I'm Cleveland.
If it's first, I would hang up on one first.
But if multiples are on the table, start having a little different conversation, because I agree with you. It's definitely time for a reset. Problem is, again, you'd like to reset with Myles Garrett to build the team around. And it's also, a team and a fan base that's been rebuilding for so long, and you were told they were a quarterback away, and you're in this scenario because you were a quarterback away and you picked the wrong quarterback.
That's over. That's some cost.
Yeah, it's done.
You can't. This can't be Gatsby's green light where we're going to get the new quarterback. That roster is no longer there. That defense is not what it was a couple years ago. The offensive line is aging. Sorry, it's over.
Yeah.
Go home. I've heard that a lot in my life too. Get out of here.
This is going to be the other thing. I think I talked about Stafford and Darnold combine week, but I think what is exactly being offered to the Browns for Myles Garrett is something that I want to hear, and it's going to go a long way towards informing whether I think the Browns should entertain it or should try to play hardball and force the issue. Because Myles Garrett may be upset. He may want to play for a contender, and I believe him, by the way. I don't think this is a financial ploy. I think Myles Garrett really wants that. But let's say they get Cam Ward, comes in, he looks awesome, the vibes are shifted, Watson's no longer around. His opinion might change. Maybe they're active in free agency. They've got some, we'll see. So I think Cleveland, there's no reason to really rush this, but you got to take calls and see how much of a price you can get. So
I think you have to have a secret negotiation with every team that's interested.
Every team. Yeah.
And also the most important part is Andrew Berry telling the GM, when you leak this, tell them I laughed and hung up on you, and then we can start the actual negotiation. That's the most important thing.
All right. I'm going to tell you something you've said you've heard a lot, which is this is over. It's time to leave. This has been a great podcast.
This is so tough.
This is on you, buddy. I'm going to be back next week ahead of the Combine with my annual Combine pod, talk about names to watch there. I'm very excited to start getting into draft season. You guys should check out Kevin's podcast. Excellent. This is football, wherever you get your
Danny
pod.
Kelly's coming on Thursday.
Incredible. The comp king himself, best comps in the business, Danny Kelly. Lots of draft stuff coming your way. I've started to dig into like draft tape, and it's been really
anybody
fun.
you're hot on that you want to
Cam
get
Ward?
out right now?
No.
No, not like anybody that is not a top name.
Not a top name. I actually was watching Shador, and I really liked. Hunter's insane. Obviously,
Yeah.
he's one of the best football players I've ever seen in my life. But I like their second receiver a lot, or third, I guess, depending on the order. Shepard is his name, number 14. I think he's like a mid-round pick, so I'll plant my flag there. That's
There you go.
Real sleeper for you.
Big Shep.
If you guys watch Love is Blind, my Love is Blind recap pod with David Dennis Jr. is now available in audio form. It's called Love is Kimes. Please go subscribe, rate, review. Yeah, 4 through 6 recap comes out today as well. In the meantime, thank you to everyone at Omaha Productions, Kirsten Specky, Anthony Jimenez, Owen Saylor, Jack Foster, Tucker Tashton, and I'll see you guys next week.